Let's try this again. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts, Thin Coats with me, Phil, the Glacial Geek. Today, we are going to be talking about how to build a competitive list. So if we're going to a tournament, or if you just want to play some more competitive games with your friend, if someone's bringing a tough list to your weekly gaming and you want to make a list that can stand up to what they've got, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we go into that, I want to thank everyone who so far has been supporting my Patreon. It's only been up for a couple days now, and it's already gotten bigger than I really could have imagined. So I really thank you all for all the support. Where it makes me excited and heartened and humbled to know that many people are really getting behind me, and that everyone seems to be responding so well to it. So even if you can't actually support it, the fact that you support the concept, it means a lot to me too. The fact that you think this is worth anybody doing it, even if you can't do it yourself, I completely understand. I know how it is. So I just appreciate that everyone's kind of getting behind it, and it makes me feel excited about what we got going on coming forward with the channel. I will have a link, obviously, at the end of this video and in the description to the Patreon if you haven't, if you want to support it. It's not necessary. I'm going to keep putting out all the content that I've been putting out, but I'm probably going to start doing some things on the Patreon for as a thank you to people. So it's it won't be a paywall for what you guys have been seeing so far, but I'm hoping to do some things to thank people who have supported me like that. So yeah, I really appreciate it, and really thank everyone who has so far and anyone who will. It means a lot. It means a lot, and I think this channel can do some really great things, and I think this community that we've developed is great, and I think you guys are fantastic, and I think that that together we can make something really awesome. So thank you. Anyway, on to the topic for today. Obviously, no deep thoughts, but I missed my little video here, so that's why I'm doing that. I just think it's kind of funny. So what we've got. So making a list. The first thing that you have to do, and I know this sounds simple and it sounds basic, is you need to figure out what faction you want to play. There are a lot of people out there that say there's only one or two factions that are possibly competitive. But if you look at all the people that keep saying the one or two competitive factions, they vary. Which is always the funny thing, is that no one seems to be dead set on the exact same one, where they're like, Astra Militarum are the rulers of the meta right now. Oh no, it's Chaos, Malefic Lords, only Malefic Lords. No, it's Guilliman and Gun Lines. They're the only ones you can't do anything against them. It's Grey Knights and there's Smite Spam. There's nothing you can do. Oh my God, all of the Militarum Tempestus and their deep striking plasma. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, there's a lot of people that'll keep saying that. The reality is, the reason so many people keep saying so many different things is that in this edition, I honestly believe that every faction can be competitive as long as you approach it competitively. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what faction you want to do, which is usually going to be what faction you have, and it's usually going to be what faction you enjoy playing. You can go out there and you can choose one of the ones that seem to be hot in the meta. That's completely fine, especially for a tournament scene. The goal of going into a tournament is to win. There's a lot of people that frown on the fact that people go in with hard lists to tournaments, but if you show up to your friend's garage with something that's just going to destroy him, then that's kind of not really following the sense of the game that you're supposed to be approaching. But if you go into a tournament scene with a list that's a pushover, it's not going to be fun for you. It's not going to be fun for your opponent. The whole point of tournaments is to try to make the hardest list you can and make it work well. The rules that they have set up for it, with the way factions work and everything like that, I think that keeps it fluffy enough for a tournament scene that you don't really need that you don't need to worry if you're going to be making a list that works for a tournament. you're not gonna have to worry about it being super unfluffy. At least in 8th edition. 7th edition they had, you know, Tau Krondar and whatnot, but you don't really have that this edition. So I think it's kind of interesting. They've almost made the tournament list more fluffy, you know, because just based on the fact that they keep the factions working the way they do. So we've picked a faction. So whatever that faction is, I don't care if it's orcs, I don't care if it's Tau, I don't care what it is. You just have to pick that faction. The next step that you want to do is figure out what all of the units in that faction do. So look through your index, look through your codex, look through the special rules. If you've got the codexes now, so if you're doing Space Marines or something, look through the stratagems and the warlord traits. Figure out what that army does. Don't just go with what other people say. You can go and dig a net list, but it's the reason that people have success with those lists from net lists is because of they know how to use them. They know what they can do, and there's a reason that they brought them. And if you don't know what they do, if you don't know what those units are doing, you're not going to be able to win with that net list. And someone that knows what they're doing with another list is going to be able to beat you. That's just the way it is. The reason that net lists work is because they find a synergy, and that's what knowing what all of these units do is going to help you find out. That's the next step, which is finding your synergy. All of the armies across the game right now have synergistic benefits and have things that work together really well to enhance their ability to perform on the battlefield. I will use one of my tournament lists that I have right now as an example. I play Dark Angels almost exclusively when I go into tournament scenes because that's what I have the most units for. It gives me the most flexibility in choosing a list, so I go with Dark Angels. And the first thing I did when I saw that was I looked through the index and saw what we did, and I saw Azrael. And I'm used to Azrael in other editions where he would just get one shot in the face with a Melta and he'd be dead. This edition, he's much, much better. And the benefits that he gives out for the points that he is are fantastic. And they're perfect for creating a gun line. So I saw that and I realized that I can make a really good gun line with Azrael there as my base for it. So I took Azrael. That was the first thing I decided on my HQ. So I had Azrael. I knew he was giving me rerolls to hit. I knew he was giving me a 4-up invul save, which was going to be very beneficial. So the next step that I was looking at was what do I want him buffing? What do I want him working with? So I knew that I really liked how las cannons worked. I thought that they were super powerful. I really liked the fact of being able to do D6 damage. It allowed me to face whatever came my way and not have to run away crying in fear. So I decided I loved my Laspreds. That's what I would run a lot in 7th edition was my Laspreds. Before I started using the Skyhammer, but I used the Laspreds a lot and I liked them a lot. So I brought my Laspreds and I thought, yeah, him buffing these Laspreds, sitting back there, going to be able to take down pretty much anything. So I found a key building block for my army. I had Azrael, I had my las cannon predators. Now we can move on to build the rest of the list. So the rest of the list, I started putting together. I knew that if I was going to play in the tournament, I had to make sure that I hit some key points in the game, key points in abilities in order to remain competitive during the game. So I looked at it and I knew that I needed some speed and I needed the ability to jump on objectives and clear objectives. For me in the Dark Angels, I knew that my Black Knights were probably best for that because they were relatively tough, they were fast, and they had the ability to get jink. So if they flat out, or if they advance now, sorry, not flat out, if they advance, they get a 5+ invul save, which is nice. They have the plasma talons, which are really great at killing things, so they could clear off objectives that they need to jump on, and they were maneuverable, so they could get where they needed to get. So I put in a squad of Black Knights because I knew that's what I wanted to have. So I knew that I could get objectives with them. I knew that I could kill big nasty things with that. And now I was looking at other things, and I knew that characters were a concern. So I started figuring out that if I wanted to run a battalion, I would need troops. And the best troops, in my opinion, for my faction are the scout snipers. So I have 2 squads of 5 scout snipers that I threw in there with camo cloaks. They could sit in ruins, get that 2-up save all day. Pretty nice. I like that, unless they're ignoring cover, but getting a 2-up save for most things is pretty nice. And they had sniper rifles, which allowed them to target characters, doing mortal wounds on 6s to wound. Perfect. So now they could start picking out those commissars to weaken the conscript blobs. They could start picking out librarians if I'm getting murdered with smite. They could start picking off apothecaries if these guys keep coming back. They were there to be able to sit in cover, preferably on an objective, and just pick off characters all day. So they can maybe take out their warlord, do what they can with that. And the fact that they could do mortal wounds on a 6+ meant that they were effective against nigh everything. So that you could even shoot them at, I've had them shoot at Imperial Knights and take down hull points off of them, because why not? Maybe there's a, if you roll that 6, it doesn't matter what their save is. So yeah, so that's what I figured. Next, worried about characters, let's give a reason to take out characters. I was also a little concerned about like big beefier characters like Gilliman or anything like that, some of the bigger ones. So I threw in a Vindicare Assassin as well, because I wanted a Vindicare Assassin. I finished out the troop choices by throwing in another scout squad with bolters that I felt I could hide either behind enemy lines to get those points, or I could put them on an objective out in the middle there. It worked. They had a mission that they would have to go in for all those things. So I've got this, and this became the core of my army. I then needed some more HQ, so I thought, well, with las cannons, rolling 1s to wound hurts, and I do a lot of rolling of 1 to wound with las cannons, it seems. So I threw in a Primaris Lieutenant to sit back there with Gilliman and my tanks in order to give reroll of 1s to wound, which was pretty fantastic, especially when you're shooting with las cannons. Almost everything's getting wounded on a 3. So at that point, the only thing you don't get to reroll is 2s. I mean, 1 in 6 spots that you either miss or can't reroll, I'll take that. So reroll all hits, reroll 1s to wound. It became really brutal. Those las cannons, shooting 4 las cannons per tank was going to be brutal. So I had that, and I also threw in a Tech Marine, because I thought, if I've got a bunch of tanks and these are going to be like the core of my army, I need to keep them alive as much as possible. So the Tech Marine getting back there, being able to heal D3 hull points, or D3 wounds on vehicles was perfect, so you can go around there. I then had some extra points, so I thought, I like Razorbacks. Razorbacks are nice this edition, so I threw one with an assault cannon, I threw one with las cannons, and I threw in a Venerable Dreadnought, because I'm a big fan of Venerable Dreadnoughts this edition, with las cannons and heavy flamer and a fist, so that he could sit back there and he can run up if he needed to, but he also had the las cannons to keep shooting at things, and he could stick back there with Azrael. So I had this list, and I went into the tournament with it, and I felt pretty good about it. The first round I went up against a Space Marine army and did really well. I shot a bunch of things and killed a bunch of things and jumped on objectives and did really well. The next game I played against Orc Horde, and I lost. A close one, but I lost. And I realized that I was skewed too heavy towards taking down heavy things with my las cannons. So that comes to the next step in creating a list, which is testing it out and finding your weaknesses. I realized my weakness was hordes. I just didn't have enough DACA number of shots to take down hordes, because you shoot an orc boy in the face, he doesn't care if it's with a las cannon, he doesn't care if you get 1 or 6 damage, he's dead. It doesn't make a difference to him. So if you've got a horde of orcs coming in, you have to have a lot of DACA going out in order to counter it, and I just didn't have that. So I went back to the drawing board. I knew about the synergies, I knew what different units could do, and I started to think about what I could do differently. So 3 Predator tanks with las cannons was a bit overkill, I figured. So I took out one of them, moved around a couple other points, and I managed to get a Land Raider Crusader with the Hurricane Bolters and the Assault Cannon, Twin Assault Cannon. He's putting out at close range. You're looking at, what is that? 36 shots at close range within 12 inches. Pretty brutal. At that point, you're putting in a lot of shots. You can take out hordes with it, and because it's so tough and so many wounds, it's going to stick around for a long time, putting out all those shots. So I thought, yeah, he's a good core piece to my anti-horde, and if I've got him out there, he can move up the board, hold objectives really well, shoot up hordes, keep them from getting to my gun line, and my gun line back there could still pick off the things that it needed to. I've got my sniper taking out the characters, so now I can take out the big heavies, I can take out the hordes, I can take out the characters, I can jump on objectives still because I've got those fast moving vehicles. I can do everything I need to in a tournament. So I went into the next tournament and did much better. Still didn't win everything, but it was a lot closer, and I never had a matchup that I felt I was unprepared for. So now I knew that the core of my list was good. It was strong, it was solid, and my list was ready to go. And you get that by practice. I went, going to multiple tournaments, getting together with friends, talking to people at your local gaming store and saying, bring a hard list, bring a competitive list, show them this video and have them build a list based upon these tactics, and have them compete against your list that you're building too. And the two of you can play off each other until the two of you get better and better and have a solid list that you can go into a tournament and feel good about. And the more you practice, the more you get to know your army, the less likely you are to forget about special rules, the less likely you are to forget about units and what they're doing. And the more you can find the weaknesses in your lists and find out if you have any units that are superfluous. The key to making a good competitive list is not have any units that are superfluous. Everything should be doing a job. Everything should have a job that it's aimed to do regardless of what the enemy is that you face. So my las cannon predators were obvious at what they could shoot. You shoot at the big heavies, you shoot at the vehicles, you pop things with multiple wounds. That's what you do with them. That's their job, that's what they do, and they do it well. Gilliman and my other HQs are back there sitting with him, sitting with them, making sure that they're doing their job to the maximum that they can, giving them protection against other las cannons, giving them protection against, giving them protection by bringing back their wounds, helping and assisting in their ability to kill things. All of my troop choices are either camping objectives or they're camping objectives and taking out characters. So, they are doing their job. I chose them for a specific purpose. Most of the time, they usually make back their points, sniper scouts. The other scouts are, they're the cheapest troop choice, which is a big reason I took them. But the fact that you can set them up outside of your deployment zone really is helpful on getting early game objectives, camping on those objectives. I've got my fast guys, my bikers are there to jump and move and be maneuverable and get into objectives for me to win me the Maelstrom points in the game. So everything has a job, and if it doesn't have a job, it doesn't belong in your list. You can replace it with something else that will do a job. Find things that will accomplish objectives for you in the game, because if they're not directly assisting you to win, then they're honestly hindering your ability to win, because everything on your list, every point should be used for a specific purpose to do something for you, and all of the loadout, the gear that you give them, should be aimed for a specific purpose. So my scouts, I have the sniper rifle ones are obvious, but then the bolter ones, I have choice between close combat, sniper. I've got a bunch of different scouts. So I've also got ones with bolt pistols and close combat weapons. I've got ones with bolters. I like the bolters because it gives me a little bit extra DECA, so that's another 10 shots at close range that I can throw out into hordes. And if I put them up there in front, they can thin down the hordes before they get closer to my more important units. So everything has to have a purpose in your list. Make sure it has a purpose in your list. And if you can't figure out what its purpose is, drop it from your list and find something else to use, some other way to use those points that will benefit you. So now you've started practicing with the list, and the list seems solid. You know, you don't know what to do with it. You know, it feels good. It's doing what you want it to do. And now what do? You know, you're still not winning the tournaments. You're still in a place now where, you know, something else needs to change for it to fix, but you don't know what to do because you like everything does its job, everything's doing a job, and you've got all your bases covered with your list. Now becomes one of the harder parts, which is knowing when to change things in your list that you like. And this was one of the things that I've done recently. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with this list, this next iteration of my list. But when I did use it, it was very good. I liked it a lot. So I started looking at my list, and I realized that, I also had an assault squad, because I'd hold them in reserves and drop them down turn 3 onto an objective or behind enemy lines to grab me things at the last second to try to hold something for me at the end of the game. That was their job, and I had them with a flamer, and I had them with like a special weapon or something like that, just in order to make them hardier. But then I started looking at my list, and I liked everything it did, but I knew it needed to be tweaked. So I looked at what my predators were doing, and they're a big point sink, and that's why I was drawn to them, is they were a lot of points. They were a big core of my army, but they also cost a lot of points. So I started looking at them, and the benefit that they had was that they threw out 4 las cannon shots from one choice. So there's 4 las cannon shots that were being shot out there. So I started looking at it, and I thought there's got to be another way to get all of those las cannons. So I thought about Devastator squads, but I don't like having them on Marine bodies, because Marine bodies go down real quick. And at that point, you've got 5 wounds and your whole squad's dead, and you've lost all those las cannons. So it's a lot of points to sink into squishy units. So I knew that wasn't going to work, because it's not doing exactly what my predators were doing. So then I started looking, and I remembered last edition I liked to run mortise pattern dreadnoughts, because they had the ability to shoot aircraft when you had to snap shoot at them, and they were perfect anti-air, because they would take out anti-air, but they would also be able to shoot at the ground targets too and do me well. So I started looking into mortise pattern dreadnoughts this edition, and turns out that they're cheaper than predators, because there are fewer hull points, just basically fewer hull points. But at the same time, as opposed to having 11 hull points, they had 8 hull points, or wounds, wounds. They had 8 wounds instead of 11 wounds, but because of that, it meant that they didn't degrade in their ability to shoot. Because my predators, as they started to lose wounds, would start shooting at 4+ or 5+ at the end. The mortise pattern dreadnoughts are hitting on 3+ throughout the whole thing. So I looked at it, and what I could do is I could drop my predators, my 2 predators that I had left, replace them with 2 mortise pattern dreadnoughts with 2 las cannons each, 2 twin las cannons each. I could also drop my venerable dreadnought, which I liked a lot. I liked what he did, but most of the time he sat back and just shot his las cannon. If I could replace him with a mortise pattern dreadnought with 2 las cannons, 2 twin las cannons, he ended up being cheaper than the venerable dreadnought, because he's hitting on 3+ instead of 2+. He doesn't have the fist, doesn't have the heavy flamer, but he was just doing the las cannons. So he could sit back there with, they could sit back there with Gilliman, with Azrael and my lieutenant and the tech marine, and create the fire base for fewer points. So now I had more points to work with. I also looked at it, and I could drop the flamer from my assault squad, and suddenly with those extra points, I could now take an Eversur assassin and throw in an extra assault marine. So now I have a 6-man assault squad with jump packs. So it gave him 1 extra wound to absorb while trying to hold that objective for me at the end of the game. And now I have an Eversur who could jump in behind the enemy lines and just wreak havoc back there and just start killing things and become an issue that they have to address. And if they're addressing him, then they can't be shooting at what I really want to keep alive, which is the las cannons and the bikers and the land raider. So that was one of the hardest steps in the whole process, was looking at a list that was good, that did what I wanted to do, and try to figure out how to make it better. Those little tweaks are the difference between winning and losing. I used it in my last tournament that I played in Anchorage, and I lost the game because of my opponent outplayed me. He just did better than I did. So it wasn't my list that lost it for me. It was me that lost it for me. And I like that. If I lose a game, it means I can learn from it, and it means I can get better for the next tournament. If I lose because of my list, it means I have to go back to the drawing board and figure it all out again. The whole game, every game that I played that tournament, I felt like my list showed up, it did what it was supposed to do, and it performed well. I didn't perform well the last game as well. I didn't perform as well as I should have, and that's why I lost. And my opponent just outplayed me. He was the better general that game, and he won, as he well deserved. And it was a very close one, and it ended up being very tight points. So at that point, it was a close game, a tight game, and it wasn't my list. My list was strong. So I feel good about my list. I'm probably going to take it the next time I go to a tournament because it's strong, and I like what it does, and it does what it does very well. So that's what it takes to make a competitive list. And you can use those same tactics, those same ideas, those same concepts, and any faction that you have. Find what your army does well, make a core of that. Then check out the bases that you need to cover. So can you jump on objectives? Can you handle hordes? Can you handle big, heavy, nasty things? Can you handle characters? Do you have the ability to handle whatever someone else's list is going to throw your way? Because regardless of the meta, if you go into a tournament, you don't know who you're going to face. You don't know what list someone else is going to bring. You have ideas because you talk to your friends, you talk to the people at your local game store. But if you go to bigger tournaments, you go to something like an LVO, and you have no idea. There's going to be a jillion lists that cover the entire gambit of what Warhammer 40K can do. So you need to be able to approach a tournament with the ability to handle anything that comes at you. I talked about this in my previous one, just building any list. But building a competitive list, it's even more important. Then you need to make sure that you're, once you make sure that you're covering your base as well, practice with that list. Play against your friends, play against other people in the game store, go to multiple smaller tournaments before you head off to a bigger one. Whatever it takes, make sure you play with that list over and over and over again so you know all the rules, you know what everything's doing, and you make sure everything is doing a job, and make sure everything has a job. And if it doesn't, replace it and find something else to do it. Then you need to look at your list analytically and find out how you can improve it. And that's the hardest part, is having a list that's good but not great, and how do you tweak it? Because, you know, I loved what my Predators did, and I had to find a way of saving points from them by changing things out. And you can. It's tough, but you can do it. So those are the steps you need to do. You can do it with orcs, you can do it with Tau, you could do it with Necrons, whatever it is. Find your core, build from there, and just know what your army does. Read that index, read that codex, know what every unit does, so that if you get to a point where you're like, wow, this unit that I thought was going to do this isn't doing that for me during games, you can look at what the rest of the stuff that you know what the rest of your army does, and you can replace it with something that's more cost effective. You can replace it with something that just does the job better. So that's what it takes. Honestly, that's what it takes to make a competitive list. You can go online and find net lists all day if you want. If you don't know how to use it, you're not going to win. So this method makes sure that you know what it's doing, and you know what your army can do, and you know how to perform with that army, and you can win with it. You may end up making a list that's very similar to something that did well at a big tournament, that does well in the net, because those lists became big lists, became winning lists with those players because they did the exact same process that I just spoke about on their own, and they're good, and they're good players, and they know what those things can do, and they can find those synergies that work really well. But if you can do it yourself, you'll have an original list that no one can look down on you for net listing, even though I think that's crap. And you can be competitive, and you can go into a tournament feeling confident that no matter what the opponent brings, you can handle it. Yeah, so that's what I think. Why don't you guys tell me down in the comments below what you do to create competitive lists? So if you go to a tournament, what do you do to make a list? Do you just throw random crap together and hope it works? Do you just play a list that you've been playing for a long time that you know how to use? Because you'll do better with that than a random brand new list. Tell me if you like my method. Tell me if that kind of makes you think differently about how you make lists. But just keep the conversation going. I love having those conversations, hearing what people have to say, hearing what people's experiences are. Let me know what your experience has been at tournaments. I know it can be frustrating sometimes, especially at first, and especially when you get to the point when you have a list that's decent but not perfect. It can be very frustrating going to tournaments because you run into some of these lists that are very highly tuned and you just feel like you had no chance to win against it, and that's frustrating. Going into a match feeling like you have no chance to win is frustrating, and that's what it takes. It takes a lot of time and effort and thought to make a list with whatever faction. There's no faction out there that I think is ever outplayed by, is always outplayed by another faction. I think there are lists that can handle every single faction out there with every other faction. So tell me what your experience has been. Tell me your frustrations have been, and let me know what you think. You don't have to go through this whole process if you're just throwing together with a friend in the garage. But maybe sometimes you and your friend in the garage might want to try to bring some more competitive lists, either because you're thinking about making a vacation of going to a big tournament like in Las Vegas, because you can make a week out of it, and suddenly you have a nice vacation in Las Vegas, and then you have a weekend of just playing Warhammer, which is awesome. Throwing some geek into your into your vacation time. Also works well with a significant other, because that way you can go with the significant other, and she or he can enjoy the city there, and you can enjoy having the tournament, and the two of you can leave happy. But yeah, so tell me what you're doing, tell me what your process you go through, and tell me your thoughts on this, and keep it going. And again, thank you all for your support, your continued watching of the channel, the telling other people about the channel, pushing the channel, pushing me, pushing everything, and especially to my patrons. I thank you guys profusely for the support that you've shown me, and I hope to keep it building and keep growing stronger and stronger. So thank you guys for everything, and I hope you guys found this enjoyable and entertaining and knowledgeable. Hope this knowledge bomb blew up in your brains. Thank you guys again, and as always, I have been Phil the Glacial Geek, and until next time, have fun.